For many years, Nova Scotia was going back and forth from the French to the English. In 1713, with the Treaty of Utrecht, the English regained control of the region, this time for good. The British had rights to Nova Scotia, but there was next to no colonization other than the native Acadians who swore oaths of neutrality between the French and British. They were needed for farming and other services they provided to the British military. The Acadian population steadily increased over the years. With the fortress of Louisbourg being returned to the French in 1748, a plan was made to build a British fort to rival the French fort. The plan was carried out by the new governor, Edward Cornwallis, who arrived in Chibucto, which is Micmac for Great Harbor. It would be renamed Halifax in honor of George Montague Dunk, 2nd Earl of Halifax, who was the president of the Board of Trade. In June 1749, a fleet carrying 2,500 men, women, and children arrived in the new colony. Other settlers came that included merchants from Boston. English, German, Swiss, and Scots settled in the area. In time, the early settlements grew and new communities were established. The building of new settlements was slowed by the constant threat of native attack outside of Halifax due to the influence of the French on the native populations, but also because of encroachment on their sacred lands. After 3 years, Cornwallis asked that His Majesty would be graciously pleased to allow of my resignation of the government and grant me the liberty of returning home. He left the province in the fall of 1752 and returned to London. Edward Cornwallis was from an aristocratic and influential family that were Freemasons. He was the driving force behind establishing the first Masonic lodge in Halifax. Governor Cornwallis was the first worshipful master of the new lodge. Cornwallis came from a royalist family who benefited after King Charles II was restored to the crown. Edward had a twin named Frederick. At the age of 12, the two brothers were appointed royal pages, and for 2 years attended the royal family and court at Windsor and at Hampton Court Palace. Edward Cornwallis is sometimes confused with his nephew, Lord Charles Cornwallis, the British commander during the American Revolution. From 1738 to 1743, Cornwallis was at Whitehall, employed on diplomatic services, principally between The Hague and London. In 1745, the exiled Charles Edward Stuart, also known as Bonnie Prince Charlie, raised an army and advanced to England, before retreating back to Scotland. British forces commanded by William Augustus, the Duke of Cumberland, were sent to crush the rebellion. Cornwallis fought alongside Cumberland, as well as James Wolfe, who would later be involved in the Second Siege of Louisbourg. The final battle came in April 1746 at Culloden. The British soldiers routed the Jacobites, killing as many as 2,000 soldiers. Cornwallis led 320 soldiers to pacify an area of the Western Highlands. Suspected Jacobite families were boarded into homes and burned to death. Properties were looted, livestock were chased off, and crops were destroyed. Colonel Peregrine Thomas Hobson was made the new governor of Nova Scotia after Cornwallis returned to England. Hobson was the former governor of Louisbourg, occupied by the British, and had overseen the removal of troops and stores from Louisbourg to Halifax. Hobson was considered an excellent choice based on his experience both at Louisbourg and Halifax. He was a colonel of the 29th Regiment of Foot. Before leaving England, he had 2 long conferences with the Board of Trade. In April and May 1752, he was instructed to settle the mass of people that had been confined to Halifax. How it was done and where they were to be located was for Hobson to decide. The goal was to get them on their own lands and to get them self-sufficient within a year of them being moved to their new settlement. During the council meeting of August 10, 1752, the location of a new settlement on the Atlantic side of the province, within about 100 miles or so of Halifax, was discussed. The Mahone Bay area to the west was being considered. The harbor there had been occupied by the French, and there was still scattered French families in the area. The new location should be within a day's sail of Halifax, a harbor with deep water just off the beach, and a place which in the past was cleared of large trees was ideal. Having salt marshes nearby and a location easily defended, in particular a peninsula, was desirable. Mirlegachet qualified on all counts. Further surveys were carried out and found to be appropriate for the settlement of the German-Swiss settlers. In particular, the Albany with Captain John Rouse was sent down to Mirlegachet with a contingent of rangers under Captain Thomas Lewis. Hobson, after taking into account the observations of Rouse and Lewis, made up his mind. Mirlegachet was the place to make the new settlement. Its name was to be Lunenburg, and the settlers, together with the necessary supplies, were to be sent down under strong guard to establish the town as soon as the ships arrived from Boston. Captain Lewis's survey of a part of Nova Scotia or Acadie in 1755 would show Mahone Bay and Oak Island. Interestingly, Captain Jeremiah Rogers was with Governor Cornwallis when Halifax was founded. He commanded the armed sloop Ulysses in pay of the government of Nova Scotia. Later, he would command the Montague. During the 7 Years' War, Rogers was a privateer that was armed and fitted out at Halifax. His mission was to capture French ships which carried contraband trade. Rogers, along with Captain Sylvanus Cobb, were also engaged in this activity. Government dispatches mention Rogers in 1751 and 1753 transporting soldiers to Mahone Bay to prepare the new township of Lunenburg, not far from Oak Island. Jeremiah Rogers would later own Lot 27 on Oak Island. In June 1753, Rogers was involved with transporting 1,453 German-Swiss settlers to Lunenburg. Among the settlers was Johann Nicholas Berghaus. The Berghaus name was later changed to Barkhaus. Charles Barkhaus is his descendant. In my next installment, I will explore the expulsion of the Acadians from Nova Scotia and how that may be connected to Oak Island. Please join Quest of Oak Island Facebook group and subscribe to Quest of Oak Island podcast on YouTube for more information.